r/ProRevenge, mom spent $8,000 on golden child, exposed her the next day. Hashtag the discovery. My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen of my laptop, the email from the trust administrator glowing mockingly in the darkness of my dorm room. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I'd just discovered something that made every sleepless night, every double shift at the campus bookstore, every moment of silent resentment finally make sense. $8,000. Gone. No, I whispered, clicking back through the transaction history again. My eyes traced the numbers like they might rearrange themselves into something different, something less devastating. But they didn't. There it was, clear as day, withdrawal from my inheritance fund, the money Grandma left specifically for me, dated exactly 3 weeks ago. I clicked on the attached note from the trust administrator. They were reaching out because there had been an unusual activity alert on the account, and they wanted to verify I'd authorized the withdrawal. The concern in their formal language felt like someone finally taking my side. I hadn't authorized anything. For 3 months, I'd been wondering where my mother had gotten the money for my sister's wedding. A wedding that apparently required $15,000 in total, with my mother covering most of it while simultaneously telling me, over our weekly phone calls, how tight things had been financially. How she was doing her best. How we all needed to make sacrifices. While I was making sacrifices, working 30 hours a week on top of a full course load, taking out loans that would haunt me for years, choosing between new textbooks and eating 3 meals a day, she was cutting checks for a rehearsal dinner featuring a champagne tower that made it into my sister's Instagram photos. The worst part? I'd actually felt guilty about resenting it. My sister, Emma, had always been the golden child. I say that not as some bitter exaggeration, but as an objective fact that every member of our extended family acknowledged, usually in hushed tones that suggested they thought it was unfortunate but inevitable. She was 3 years younger, devastatingly beautiful in a way that seemed to come effortlessly to her, and she had never wanted for anything. While I was buying clothes at thrift stores, Emma had regular shopping trips to the mall. While I worked weekends, Emma went to the beach with friends. While I stayed up late writing papers, Emma posted vacation photos. And Mom never made any secret of which daughter she preferred. I could pinpoint the exact moment things shifted, actually. It was my 16th birthday, which fell on a random Tuesday during the school week. My mother had promised she'd take me out to dinner, just the 2 of us, nothing fancy, but something special. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks. But that afternoon, Emma called from her friend's house saying she'd been excluded from their party because of some drama. Mom rushed to pick her up, and then decided the 3 of us would go to dinner together as a family bonding experience. At dinner, I watched my mother's attention orbit entirely around Emma, laughing at her jokes, reassuring her about the friendship drama, ordering her favorite expensive entree while encouraging me to get something from the lighter side of the menu because I needed to watch my figure. That birthday dinner became a metaphor for everything that followed, moments that were supposed to be mine, commandeered. Attention that should have been mine, redirected. Love that should have been equally distributed, hoarded. I tried not to let it destroy me. Really, I had. I threw myself into school, convinced myself that if I just worked hard enough and achieved enough, my mother would see my value. I took on loans to pay for college myself, reducing my financial burden on her. I was the responsible one, the independent one, the easy one. I smiled and nodded and pretended not to notice the favoritism because making a fuss about it would make me the difficult one, the ungrateful one, the bad daughter. And through it all, I had this money. This safety net. This promise from my grandmother, who had always seen me, really seen me, that I wouldn't have to struggle alone forever. Grandma's inheritance was supposed to be my fresh start. My way out of the constant financial anxiety. My proof that someone believed in me, even if my own mother didn't. My mother had stolen it to throw my sister a party. I reread the wedding hashtag on Instagram, hashtag Emma and James. I scrolled through the photos. There was the rehearsal dinner with its absurd champagne tower. There was Emma in an altered dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. There was the reception venue, decorated like a dream, with an apparently live band. There was my mother, beaming in photographs, looking prouder than I'd ever seen her look at anything related to me. And I, of course, had been there. I'd taken time off one of my jobs to attend, had worn a dress I borrowed from a friend because I couldn't afford one, had smiled through the entire day while silently tallying the costs. I'd even bought them a gift, a nice serving set I couldn't really afford, because I still, even then, was trying to prove I was gracious, that I was good, that I deserved to exist in this family. The entire time, my mother was using my stolen money to celebrate my sister. I closed my laptop and opened it again. Same truth. I pulled up my banking app. My checking account balance, $847.23. My available credit on my emergency credit card, $432. That was everything I had in the world. Meanwhile, $8,000 of mine was sitting somewhere, probably already spent on some other luxury for Emma, or maybe reabsorbed back into my mother's account under the guise of family funds. My phone sat on my desk, dark and silent. I could call her right now. Scream at her. Demand answers. But I already knew what would happen. She'd get defensive. She'd say it was an emergency. She'd say I was being selfish. She'd remind me of everything she'd sacrificed for me, as if her emotional labor gave her the right to steal my actual labor, the money I'd earned through exhausting work, through sacrifice, through postponing my own life. No. I wasn't going to give her a chance to manipulate this, to reframe it, to gaslight me into believing I was overreacting. I had a better idea. A worse idea, maybe, depending on who you asked. But the kind of idea that makes you sit up straight in the darkness, because you finally feel like you might have some power. Family reunion. 2 weeks. Everyone would be there. And so would the truth. Hashtag the plan takes shape. I didn't sleep that night. I told myself I was gathering evidence, building a case, being methodical and smart. But really, I was just spiraling in a way that felt productive. By 5 a.m., I had created a folder on my desktop labeled Evidence and filled it with screenshots. The trust administrator's email. The transaction history. The detailed records showing the exact date and amount of the withdrawal. I cross-referenced it with Emma's Instagram posts. The wedding was 3 weeks after the withdrawal, perfectly timed. I even found a receipt Emma had posted as a joke on her close friend's story, a photo of the wedding photographer's invoice. The timestamp on that photo was dated 4 days after the money disappeared from my account. My hands felt cold as I compiled it all. This wasn't just anger anymore. This was fact. This was documentation. This was proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't exaggerating, wasn't just a bitter sibling inventing narratives to explain away normal family dynamics. My roommate, Sage, came back from her early shift at the campus coffee shop around 6 a.m. and found me still at my desk, dark circles under my eyes, approximately 7 browser tabs open, and what she would later describe as the expression of someone planning either a TED talk or a murder. "Oh my God, what happened?" she asked, dropping her bag by her bed. I told her. Not because I was planning to tell anyone, but because I could not tell her. The words just poured out of me like I'd been holding them in for years, which, I guess, I had. To her credit, Sage didn't try to talk me down immediately. She listened, read through my screenshots, and then sat on the edge of my bed with her arms crossed. "Okay," she said finally. "So your plan is to, what, exactly?" "The family reunion," I said. "In 2 weeks. Everyone's going to be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of it. I'm going to show them everything. The transactions, the dates, the proof that Mom stole from my inheritance to pay for Emma's wedding." Sage winced. "That's pretty nuclear." "It's the truth," I said, and I could hear the brittleness in my own voice. "Yeah, but like." Sage chose her words carefully. "You know that. I know that. But are you ready for what happens next? Because once you blow this up in front of the entire family, you can't unblow it up." I hadn't thought about that specifically, but I also didn't want to. I was riding a wave of righteous anger, and it felt good. It felt like agency. It felt like finally not being the person who quietly accepted crumbs. "She stole from me," I said. "I know. My grandmother left me that money. I know. And she just took it. And lied to me. And while I was working myself to death, she was." "I know," Sage said, not unkindly. "But I'm asking if you've thought about the consequences. Like, actually thought about them." I hadn't. Not really. I'd thought about the catharsis of exposure. I'd thought about my extended family finally seeing the truth. I'd thought about my mother's face when she realized I'd discovered what she'd done. But the part after that? The actual fallout? "What do you mean?" I asked. Sage sighed and got up to change out of her coffee-stained work shirt. "I mean, okay, let's say you expose her at this reunion. You show everyone the evidence. You make your case. Then what? Your mom denies it. Or she admits it but has some excuse. Or she cries and makes it about how hard she's worked and how unappreciated she is. And then you still don't have your $8,000 back. I'll have the truth out there. Will you?" Sage turned to face me, and there was genuine concern in her eyes. "Or will you just have started a massive family drama, possibly damaged your relationship with your mom beyond repair, and still be out $8 grand? I felt something in my chest deflate slightly. "So what are you saying? That I should just let it go?" "No," Sage said. "I'm saying maybe there's a middle step you're missing. Like, I don't know, talking to a lawyer. Finding out if this is actually theft. Getting the money back before you burn down your entire family." That was not a bad point. "Shit," I said. "Yeah," Sage said. She came back and sat on my bed again. "Look, I'm not saying don't do this. I'm saying maybe don't do it at a public family event where you can't control the narrative and your mom is surrounded by people who might take her side. Maybe do it in a way where you actually get consequences and restitution instead of just drama." My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Call me when you get a chance, sweetie. I want to hear about your week." The casual warmth of it made me feel sick. She was messaging me like she hadn't stolen thousands of dollars from me. Like she wasn't a liar. Like we were having a normal, healthy relationship. I didn't respond. "I need to talk to someone who actually knows about this stuff," I said quietly. "Like a lawyer or something. Your school probably has legal aid," Sage offered. "Or like, a student advocacy office. They might have resources." I nodded numbly. It was suddenly clear to me that my original plan, theatrical exposure at a family gathering, was the kind of thing that felt good to fantasize about at 2 a.m. but might not actually be smart. What I actually needed was my money back. What I actually needed was accountability. What I actually needed was for my mother to face real consequences, not just embarrassment. That was a different problem. A harder problem. A problem that required thinking instead of just reacting. "I'm going to the student advocacy office today," I said, making a decision even as I spoke. "I'm going to ask them about my options." "Good," Sage said. "And in the meantime, maybe don't text your mom back anything you might regret. Don't tip her off. Don't let her know you know yet." She was right. If I went to her now, gave her a chance to explain or defend or manipulate, I'd lose the element of surprise. I'd lose the advantage of having done my research, gathered my evidence, understood my options. I closed that evidence folder and opened a new document instead. Next steps. It was time to stop being angry and start being strategic. Hashtag when plans don't survive contact with reality. The student advocacy office was in the basement of the administration building, which felt appropriately depressing for what was essentially a last resort resource. I'd skipped my 10 a.m. lecture, something I never did, and spent 20 minutes walking in circles around campus, psyching myself up to actually go through with this. Sage's voice was in my head, asterisk don't tip her off. Be strategic, asterisk. But there was another voice too, one that sounded suspiciously like my mother's, asterisk don't make a scene. Don't be dramatic. Don't ruin the family, asterisk. I pushed both of them down and went through the door. The woman behind the desk was maybe in her 60s, with reading glasses on a beaded chain and the exhausted expression of someone who'd spent her entire career listening to college students' problems. Her nameplate said, Margaret Chen, student advocate. Hi, I said, immediately feeling like I was wasting her time. I have a legal question, I think. Or maybe it's financial. I'm not really sure. Margaret gestured to the chair across from her desk. Sit. Start wherever you want. So I did. I told her about the inheritance, about the withdrawal, about the trust administrator's email confirming the transaction. I didn't cry, which felt like a small victory. I just laid out the facts, clinical and precise, while Margaret took notes. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me over her glasses. Okay, she said. First thing, this is definitely not just a financial question. This is legal. Second thing, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to recommend you talk to one. But I can tell you some basics about what you might be looking at, and I can point you towards some resources. She pulled out a folder. Does your family have any wealth? Like, enough that consulting an actual attorney would be financially feasible. I thought about my mother's house, which was paid off. My father's pension, which wasn't huge but was stable. My uncle who was an accountant. My aunt who, actually, I wasn't sure what my aunt did, but she always seemed successful. Maybe. I said. My mom probably wouldn't pay for a lawyer for me, if that's what you're asking. But I might be able to ask other family members. That could be tricky, Margaret said, given that this involves your mother. But here's the thing, depending on how the trust was structured, what your grandmother's will said, and what state law applies, what your mother did might actually constitute fraud or breach of fiduciary duty. If she was authorized to access that account in her role as, what, your guardian? Trustee. Trustee of the trust, I said. She was supposed to be managing it until I turned 25. Margaret's eyebrows went up slightly. So she had legal access, but not legal authority to withdraw it for her own purposes or her other children's purposes. That's important. The fact that the trust administrator sent you the notification, do you know why they did that? I thought back to the email. I think because I was turning 22. They said it was a notification about the trust status. And they didn't tell your mother about that notification? I don't think so. The email came to my university account, not her. Margaret made another note. Okay. So here's what I think you should do. 1. I'm going to give you the contact information for the campus legal clinic. They offer limited free services to students. 2. I think you should document everything, screenshots, emails, the works. Keep it organized. 3. I think you need to decide very carefully what outcome you actually want here. What do you mean? I asked, though I was pretty sure I knew. I mean, Margaret said carefully, there's a difference between wanting to expose your mother and wanting to recover your money. Those are two very different goals, and they might require different strategies. One might actually prevent you from achieving the other. There it was again. The same thing Sage had said, but from an authority figure who actually knew about this stuff. I want my money back, I said, and I could hear the defensiveness in my voice. But I also want her to face consequences for lying to me. For stealing from me. Those two things might be in tension, Margaret said gently. If you go scorched earth and expose her to the whole family, she might actually become more defensive. She might dig in. She might hire her own lawyer and fight you on it. Litigation is expensive and time-consuming and emotionally brutal, especially when it's family. On the other hand, if you approach this as a civil matter, if you try to recover the money through proper channels, you might get your restitution, but you might not get the public acknowledgement of wrongdoing that you're looking for. I felt something tighten in my chest. So I have to choose. I can't have both. You might be able to, Margaret said. But I think you need to talk to an actual lawyer about your specific situation before you do anything irreversible. The legal clinic can help with that. They can also maybe advise you on whether filing any kind of complaint, with the trust, with law enforcement, whatever, would be appropriate. Law enforcement. I hadn't even thought about that. The idea that what my mother did could be criminal, not just morally wrong, made me feel simultaneously vindicated and terrified. What if she denies it? I asked. What if she says she had permission to access the money? Then it becomes a he said she said situation, and you'll need documentation and witnesses, Margaret said. Which is why I'm telling you to document everything and talk to an actual attorney. They can tell you if you have a case. I left the advocacy office with a folder full of contact information and a head full of complications. Everything had seemed so clear at 2 a.m., riding the wave of righteous anger. Now it was fractured into 1,000 different variables and contingencies. My phone buzzed. Another text from my mother, thinking about you. Do you want to come home for dinner this weekend? The casual normalcy of it was obscene. She was inviting me to dinner like she hadn't stolen thousands of dollars. Like she wasn't manipulating me. Like we were a normal family with a normal relationship. I didn't respond. Instead, I called the legal clinic and made an appointment for next Tuesday. I organized my evidence folder by date. I wrote down every conversation I could remember with my mother about money, about Emma's wedding, about my own financial struggles. And I waited. 2 weeks until the family reunion. 2 weeks to figure out what I was actually going to do. 2 weeks to decide whether I wanted justice or revenge. 2 weeks to realize that maybe, just maybe, I couldn't have both. Hashtag the lawyer said something I didn't want to hear. The legal clinic was located in a converted office space that smelled like old carpet and photocopy toner. My appointment was with a third-year law student named David Chen. Margaret had mentioned he was particularly good with family law cases, and he had the kind of nervous energy that made me wonder if he was more anxious about this meeting than I was. So, he said, spreading out my documentation across his desk like a crime scene investigator. Your mother is the trustee of your grandmother's trust, and she withdrew $8,000 without your consent or knowledge. The trust administrator sent you a notification, but not your mother. And you have email evidence of the withdrawal and the purpose, your sister's wedding. Right, I said. And the trust documents say the money is supposed to be held for my benefit until I'm 25. My grandmother was very specific about that in her will. David was quiet for a long moment, reading through the emails on his laptop. I watched his face, trying to interpret the micro-expressions. I'd gotten good at this, reading what adults weren't saying out loud. Okay, he finally said. Here's what I'm seeing, and I want to be straight with you because Margaret said you appreciated that. Your mother almost certainly violated her fiduciary duty. That's the legal term for when someone in a position of trust betrays their trust for personal benefit. She had access to the account but not authority to use it for her own purposes or anyone else's except yours. That's pretty clear-cut. My stomach did a little flip. This was real. It was actually illegal. But, David continued, and I hated that, but there are some complications. Of course there were. First, he said, counting on his fingers, proving intent. Your mother could argue that she intended to replace the money, or that she considered it a loan, or that the family's financial situation was genuinely dire and she needed to access it for your household survival. It's a weak argument, but it's an argument. She never said any of that, I said immediately. She said they didn't have the money for the wedding, and that's why they needed to. I stopped. I'd almost said why they needed to steal from me, but that sounded unhinged when I said it out loud. Can you prove she said that? David asked. Do you have texts? Emails? Witnesses? I thought back. My best friend was there when my mom said they were struggling financially. And I think there might be texts. I'm not sure. My mom mostly calls me. Okay, so that's a maybe. Second complication, even if you win a civil case, and you probably would, the evidence is pretty good, getting your money back might be complicated if your mother doesn't have liquid assets. You could get a judgment against her, but if she doesn't have the money to pay it, enforcing that judgment is another legal process entirely. It could take months or years. I felt something deflate inside me. But she has money. She has a house, she has. She could sell the house, David said. Or she could claim it's community property with your father and you'd have to go after your dad too, which gets messy. Or she could declare hardship and the court might reduce the amount. I'm not saying you can't win. I'm saying winning and getting paid are two different things. What about making her admit what she did? I asked. Exposing her. David chose his words carefully. Litigation is public. Court records are public. If you file a case, it exists in the system. Your family will definitely find out. But, and this is a big but, if you drag this through courts, it becomes adversarial. Your mother will hire her own lawyer. She'll fight you. She might not ever actually admit wrongdoing, she'll just settle to make it go away. And depending on the settlement, there might be confidentiality agreements. She could pay me and then tell everyone she didn't do anything wrong. Potentially, yes. I stood up and walked to the small window in David's office. Below, students were crossing the quad in the late afternoon sun, looking unburdened and carefree. I wondered what that felt like. What if I don't care about the money? I said quietly. What if I just want her to admit what she did? To acknowledge that she stole from me? David was quiet. When I turned around, he was looking at me with something like pity, which somehow made it worse. Then you have a different problem, he said. Because your mother admitting to theft, or breach of fiduciary duty, or fraud, is not something she's going to volunteer to do. You can't force someone to confess, especially not in a legal setting where they have a lawyer telling them not to. And if you're not pursuing legal action, then you don't have any leverage to make her admit anything. So I could expose her at the family reunion, I said, and now I was really grasping at straws. I could tell everyone what happened, make it public. You could, David said. And that might feel really good in a moment. But legally speaking, it wouldn't help your case. In fact, it might hurt it. If you've already told the whole family, your mother has even more reason to fight you on the legal side, because now there's reputational damage on top of the financial issue. She'll look like she's being accused publicly, and people respond to that defensively. I sat back down. So what are you saying I should do? I'm saying you need to decide what you actually want, David said, and he sounded frustrated in a way that suggested he'd had this conversation before, probably with other clients who wanted revenge instead of results. Do you want your money back? Or do you want your family to know what your mother did? Because I can help you with the first one. The second one, that's not a legal problem. It feels like a legal problem, I said bitterly. It feels like a crime. It might be, David acknowledged. Depending on the specifics, this could theoretically be prosecuted as theft or embezzlement. But that would be the state's decision, not yours. And you'd have to report it to law enforcement, which is also going to blow up your family situation. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it, but I could feel the weight of it. My mother, probably. Still sending messages like everything was normal. I need to think about this, I said. That's smart, David said. But don't think too long. The statute of limitations on civil suits for breach of fiduciary duty varies by state, but you don't want to wait years. And if you're considering involving law enforcement, evidence can degrade or get lost over time. Plus, the longer you wait, the more time your mother has to potentially cover her tracks or move money around. 2 weeks until the family reunion suddenly felt very short. I thanked David and left, walking back across campus as the sun was setting. My phone buzzed again. And again. I finally looked at it. 3 texts from my mother. 1 from my father. 1 from Emma asking if I was coming to a cousin's dinner this weekend. They were all still treating me like I was part of the family. Like nothing had changed. Like my mother hadn't done what she'd done. I wondered if that would be true after the reunion. I wondered if I wanted it to be. Chunk 5. The problem with having a plan is that having a plan makes you start noticing all the ways the plan could fall apart. I spent the next week in a state of hypervigilance, analyzing every interaction with my mother like it was a witness testimony I needed to cross-examine. When she called me on Tuesday, asking if I wanted her to send me home-cooked meals, suddenly I was wondering if this was manipulation or genuine care. When she texted asking about my classes, I found myself parsing the subtext. Was she being a normal mom, or was she trying to establish a pattern of attentiveness that would make her look better when this all exploded? The paranoia was exhausting. I'd taken David's advice and decided to pursue the civil case. That felt like the responsible option, something concrete that I could control. Revenge could wait until there was actually leverage to back it up. But I also couldn't let go of the idea that the family reunion was my chance to finally make her answer for what she'd done. To make her stop getting away with it. The problem was that now that I talked to a lawyer, the legal reality was sitting in my head like a stone. My mother could fight me. She could claim intent to repay. She could involve my father, complicate things, drag it out. And even if I won, she might never actually admit to doing anything wrong. What good was winning if she got to keep the story about herself? Friday afternoon, I was sitting in the campus library, supposedly studying for my organic chemistry exam, when my roommate Chin found me. I'd been staring at the same page for 40 minutes. "You look like you're plotting a murder," he said, dropping into the seat across from me. "Just family stuff," I said, which was the most honest lie I could manage. "Is this about the wedding?" Chin asked. He had that tone, careful, like he was approaching a feral animal. I'd apparently been radiating rage for a while now, because everyone was treating me like I was volatile. "Why would it be about the wedding?" I asked, too quickly. "Because Emma won't shut up about it. She's been texting the group chat nonstop about final fittings and rehearsal dinner plans. And you've been weird ever since it happened. Weirder than usual, I mean. Not normal weird." I felt something tighten in my chest. Emma had been texting the group chat. Our friend group's group chat. What has she been saying? I asked. Chin shrugged. "Just wedding stuff. Apparently your mom is throwing her some kind of special rehearsal dinner. Very fancy, very last minute. She was saying something about how your mom really came through for her, like she was really there when it mattered." He paused. "I don't know, man." It felt a little pointed, considering. "Considering what?" I interrupted. "Considering that your mom's been basically ignoring the fact that you exist," Chin said flatly. "No offense." "None taken," I said automatically, but my mind was spinning. My mother was throwing Emma a rehearsal dinner. A fancy one. With money she didn't have. Money she'd stolen from me. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through the texts my mother had sent me. Nothing about a rehearsal dinner. She hadn't mentioned it at all. The last text she'd sent was 3 days ago, asking if I wanted her to pick me up anything from the grocery store when she was in town. "Is she in town?" I asked Chin. "Who, your mom?" "I don't know, man." "Why?" I opened my banking app and checked my account balance. The campus job had deposited my latest paycheck, and I'd already mentally allocated it to next month's portion of tuition. The loans were accumulating faster than I could pay attention to them. Then I opened the email from the trust administrator that I'd been staring at for days. The one that confirmed the $8,000 withdrawal. I scrolled past it to the history of activity on the account, looking for anything else I'd missed. There was another withdrawal. Dated 4 days ago. $3,200. And the purpose line read, "Family distribution, wedding expenses." My vision narrowed. I read it again. Then a third time. The room felt suddenly too small. "Hey, are you okay?" Chen was asking. "You look like you're going to throw up." "Did Emma say how much the rehearsal dinner cost?" I asked. "I don't know, like 3,000 something. She was joking about your mom going all out." "Why does it?" Chen stopped. Understanding dawned on his face. "Oh. Oh no." "Oh what?" I said, even though I already knew. "That's the money, isn't it? Your grandmother's money." I didn't answer. I was too busy calculating. 8,000 from the first withdrawal. 3,200 from the second. That meant my mother had stolen more than $11,000 from my inheritance. Not just for the wedding itself, but for the rehearsal dinner too. For extras. For going all out. For making sure everyone knew that she was the kind of mother who came through for her daughter. "You need to talk to your mom," Chen said carefully. "I'm not talking to my mom until I have the full picture," I said, which came out harder than I intended. I sat there, in the middle of the library, and I called the trust administrator. It took 4 transfers and 15 minutes of explaining before I finally got someone who could pull up the full account history. 2 withdrawals totaling $11,200. Both authorized by my mother. Both flagged as wedding-related expenses. "Has there been any attempt to repay?" I asked, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. "No, ma'am. The account has not received any deposits from the trustee since the withdrawal dates." When I hung up, Chen was still there, looking genuinely worried. "You're going to destroy her," he said quietly. "At the reunion, you're going to destroy her, and I don't know if that's justice or if that's something else." "So what?" I said. "She deserves it." "Maybe," Chen said. "But you need to think about what happens after. Like, actually think about it. Because once you say something in front of the whole family, you can't unsay it. And everyone's going to have to pick a side." I knew he was right. I'd known it since I talked to David. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things, and right now I was feeling a lot. "She's not done," I said finally. "She's not finished stealing from me. How much more is she going to take before the reunion? How much of my inheritance is going to go to my sister before I stop her?" "So maybe," Chen said slowly, "you don't wait for the reunion." The library suddenly felt very quiet. Hashtag chunk 6. The problem with Chen's suggestion was that it made immediate sense, which meant it also made immediate terror. Don't wait for the reunion. Just do it. Now. Before she could steal more. Before she could disappear the evidence or construct a better defense or make another withdrawal that would show up in my account as just another family disappointment I was supposed to absorb. But now meant giving up the one thing I'd had for the last week, control. The reunion was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to prepare, to document everything, to make sure my story was airtight. 3 weeks to imagine every possible outcome and scenario plan my way to victory. Confronting her now meant walking into the unknown. I left the library without studying for organic chemistry. I went back to my apartment, locked myself in my room, and spent 6 hours reading through every email my mother had sent me over the past month. Looking for the moment when she crossed from possible incompetence to definite malice. Here's what I found, nothing useful. She'd been careful. She hadn't written, taking your money to spoil your sister, in any of her messages. She'd written things like, we're all going through a tough time financially, and Emma's wedding is so important to this family, and I hope you understand that we all have to pitch in when it matters. Vague enough to be defensible. Specific enough to be insulting once you knew what she'd actually done. I called David Cho at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night. He answered on the third ring, which suggested he was either still at his office or had made the professional judgment call that a client calling at midnight probably meant something serious had happened. There was another withdrawal, I said without preamble. $3,200, 4 days ago. Same account, same authorization. She's stolen more than 11,000 total. There was a pause. I could almost hear him sitting up straighter on the other end of the line. Okay, he said carefully. That actually changes the framing slightly. Multiple withdrawals suggest pattern rather than desperation. That's better for your case. It's not about the case anymore, I said. I need to know what happens if I confront her now. Before the reunion. Before she takes more. What happens, David said slowly, is that you lose whatever advantage you had. Right now she doesn't know you know about the second withdrawal. She might not even remember the first one clearly enough to have a story prepared. If you confront her, she gets to construct a narrative. She gets to call it a misunderstanding. She gets to frame it however she wants before the legal system gets involved. So I just let her keep stealing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the timing of when you act matters. In litigation, timing is everything. You want to move when you have the most leverage and she has the least ability to respond effectively. I understood what he was saying. I even agreed with it, intellectually. But somewhere in my chest was a different kind of logic, the logic of someone who'd been watching their mother carefully for an entire week and realized she was still planning to attend Emma's rehearsal dinner, still planning to play the generous mother, still planning to pretend everything was fine. How many more times was I supposed to sit across from her at family events and smile while she patted my arm and asked about my classes, knowing the entire time that she was spending my inheritance on making my sister's life better? I hung up with David and called my father. This was not a good decision. I knew it was not a good decision even as I was doing it. But my father was the other trustee on my grandmother's account, which meant he should have known about these withdrawals. Which meant either he knew and had approved them, or he didn't know and had been completely sidelined by my mother, and both of those things were problems I needed to understand. He answered on the first ring. That was weird too. Hi, honey, he said. Everything okay? Did you authorize Mom to withdraw $8,000 from my inheritance account? I asked. Silence. Long enough that I could hear him breathing. Long enough that I knew the answer before he gave it. Where is this coming from? He asked finally. Did you authorize it? I repeated. It's not that simple. It is actually that simple. You either did or you didn't. He sighed. I heard him moving, probably going into another room. My parents had separate spaces in their house, my mother's office where she managed the family finances, my father's study where he retreated when things got difficult. I was apparently making him retreat. Your mother asked if we could use some of the inheritance to help with Emma's wedding, he said carefully. She was very upset about the financial pressure. She explained that the wedding cost more than they'd budgeted and that she felt terrible asking you directly. I thought it was a one-time thing. A family emergency. Did you look at the account? I asked. Did you actually verify what was being taken? Not in detail, no. Your mother said she'd handle it, Anne. She stole more than $11,000, Dad. Not 8. 11. And she did it twice, 4 days apart. And she's been lying about where the money went. She's been lying to me about struggling financially while throwing Emma a fancy rehearsal dinner. Another silence. This one felt different. Heavier. I don't think she was trying to lie to you specifically, my father said, which was possibly the worst thing he could have said. I think she was just trying to manage an impossible situation. An impossible situation that she created by overspending on my sister's wedding. Emma's wedding was important to your mother. You know how much she cares. She cares about Emma, I said flatly. She doesn't care about me. That's the only fact that matters here. I heard him breathing on the other end of the line. I waited for him to deny it. To defend me. To say something that suggested he'd ever actually noticed the disparity in how we were treated. That's not fair, he said finally. Your mother loves both of you very much. She stole my money, Dad. My grandmother's money. The only thing Grandma left me specifically because she knew what this family was like. That's not love. That's the opposite of love. I know you're upset, and you have every right to be, but we need to handle this carefully. Your mother is under a lot of stress, and if we approach this the wrong way. I hung up on him. Then I turned off my phone because I didn't want to deal with the inevitable callbacks and angry texts from both of them. I sat in my apartment in the dark and thought about what Chen had said, everyone's going to have to pick a side. My father had already picked his side. That was the real revelation. Not that my mother had stolen the money, that confirmed something I'd suspected for years. But that my father had enabled it. That he'd chosen his marriage over his daughter's future. That he'd done it so casually, so thoughtlessly, that he probably didn't even realize he'd done it at all. And now I had a choice too. I could wait for the reunion and expose them both at once, in front of the entire family. Or I could act now, while I was still angry enough to see clearly. The difference was that now I understood, this wasn't about exposing hypocrisy. This was about making them understand that I'd finally stopped being invisible. #Chunk7. I didn't turn my phone back on until Saturday morning. By then, there were 17 missed calls, 10 from my mother, 5 from my father, 2 from Emma, and 34 text messages ranging from concerned to furious to manipulative. My mother's first message: honey, your father says you're upset about something. Can we talk about this? By message 8, the tone had shifted. I don't appreciate being accused of things without a chance to explain myself. By message 15, you're being incredibly selfish right now. Emma is stressed enough without family drama. I didn't read them all the way through. I screenshotted the ones that mattered and sent them to David Cho with a note: they know I know. What do I do? His response came within minutes: don't do anything. Give it 48 hours. Let them panic. Fear makes people make mistakes. But fear also makes people desperate. And desperate people are unpredictable. I spent Saturday avoiding my apartment's common areas, terrified that my mother might show up at my door. She had a key, she'd insisted on it, for emergencies, and while I'd never thought she'd use it without permission before, I'd also never thought she'd steal from my inheritance. My threat assessment of my own mother was clearly unreliable. I went to campus instead. The library felt safer than anywhere else. At least there, surrounded by other people grinding through their own problems, I could think without the weight of family expectation crushing down on me. That's where Chen found me at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Your mother called me, Chen said, dropping into the chair across from me like they'd planned to meet. She asked if I knew anything about your mental health concerns and whether you'd been acting unstable lately. I stared at them. What? Yeah. She was very subtle about it, but basically asking me to confirm that you're an unreliable narrator of your own life. She said you'd made some wild accusations and she was worried about you. She's trying to discredit me, I said flatly. Obviously, Chen said. Which means she's panicking. Which means she's going to escalate. You need to be ready for that. Ready how? She's my mother. What's she going to do, call me crazy in front of the entire family? Possibly, Chen said. But more likely she's going to call the family and give them her version of events before you can give them yours. She's going to reframe this narrative so that you're the problem instead of her. I felt my stomach drop. The reunion isn't for 2 weeks. Exactly. She's got 2 weeks to poison the well. To make sure that when you do talk to people, they're already primed to think you're either lying or exaggerating or, her current angle, mentally unstable. My phone buzzed. A text from my father: your mother is very hurt. She's saying you made some serious accusations without any evidence. Can we discuss this like adults? Evidence. She'd used the word in her text to me too, buried in message number 12. Like I didn't have receipts, account statements, withdrawal records, dated emails. Like the proof wasn't already in my hands. I have evidence, I told Chen, pulling up my screenshots. Bank statements. Authorization records. Dated correspondence. And does your family know you have all that? Chen asked. Not yet. My lawyer said to wait. To let them panic and make mistakes. To time it for maximum leverage. Your lawyer is right, Chen said. But your mother isn't going to wait for you to make your move. She's going to use these 2 weeks to make sure nobody believes you when you do. She's already started. I thought about that. About my mother calling Chen. About what she might be saying to other people in the family right now. About the narrative she was constructing. I need to talk to Emma, I said suddenly. No, you don't, Chen said firmly. She's my sister. She deserves to know what mom did. Emma is 17. She's in the middle of preparing for her wedding. She's also not the person who stole from you. Your mother is the person who stole from you. And if you go to Emma with this, you're putting her in an impossible position. You're asking her to choose between her mother and her wedding. And she's going to resent you for that, regardless of which side she picks. So what, I just let my mother lie about me. You let your lawyer handle it, Chen said. You give him the go-ahead to contact your mother's attorney. You make it official. You take this out of the family drama space and put it into the legal space, where there are rules and consequences and your mother can't just manipulate her way out of it. David said to wait until the reunion. David is a lawyer, not a strategist. He's thinking about courtrooms and liability. He's not thinking about your family relationships or the fact that your mother is an active threat to your narrative. I looked down at my phone. 17 missed calls from my mother. My father's recent message still sitting there unanswered. The weight of being expected to smooth this over, to make peace, to prioritize my mother's feelings about being caught over my own feelings about being stolen from. I can't do both, I said quietly. I can't let my lawyer handle it legally and also wait until the reunion to expose her to the family. If I go legal, she'll know. She'll get a cease and desist or whatever, and she'll tell everyone that I'm suing my own mother. That's the narrative she'll push. Then you need to decide what you actually want, Chen said. Do you want the money back? Or do you want the family to acknowledge what she did? I opened my mouth to say both. But we both knew the answer wasn't that simple. I want her to stop, I said finally. I want her to stop treating me like I don't matter. I want her to stop pretending to be someone she's not. I want the family to see what she actually is instead of what she pretends to be. Then you go legal, Chen said. And you do it now, before she has time to convince anyone that you're the problem. Because in 2 weeks, when she's had 14 days to spin this story, nobody's going to believe you even if you have receipts. My phone buzzed again. My mother, please don't do anything rash. Let's sit down and talk about this like a family. I stared at that message. At the implicit threat. At the assumption that I would listen. That I would back down. That my anger would fade and I'd return to being the dutiful daughter who accepted scraps and said thank you. Okay, I said to Chen. Call David. Tell him I'm ready to move forward. That's when everything changed. #Chunk8. David Cho moved fast. By Monday morning, he'd sent a formal letter to my mother's address demanding repayment of the $8,000 plus interest within 30 days, with documentation of the unauthorized withdrawal attached. He also sent copies to my father and copies to the family trust administrator. It was official now. It was real. My mother called 17 times on Monday. I didn't answer any of them. By Tuesday, my father had called David's office. By Wednesday, he'd hired his own lawyer. By Thursday, my mother had called every single person in the extended family, and the narrative was exactly what Chen had predicted. I was unstable, making wild accusations, trying to destroy the family over a misunderstanding, and most damning, I was suing my own mother, which made me a monster. I found out about this through my aunt, who texted me, "Sweetie, I'm hearing some concerning things about you from your mother. She's very worried about your mental health. Would you like to talk?" I forwarded her David's letter instead. Then I called my father. We need to talk, I said before he could say anything. We certainly do, he said, and his voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. Your mother is devastated. She says you're making accusations that could destroy this family, and frankly, the amount of drama you're creating right now. Dad, I cut him off. Stop. Just stop. I have bank statements. I have withdrawal records. I have emails where Mom explicitly said the family was struggling financially while she was simultaneously spending $8,000 of my inheritance on Emma's wedding. I'm not making accusations. I'm stating facts. There was a long silence. Mom said you were upset about the loan thing, he said finally, and he sounded smaller than I'd ever heard him. She said you misunderstood and she was trying to find ways to pay you back, and this legal action is. She lied to you, I said flatly. She's been lying to both of us. And now that she's been caught, she's trying to convince everyone that I'm the problem instead of taking responsibility for what she did. Another silence. Longer this time. Can you come home this weekend? He asked quietly. We need to have this conversation in person. I said yes, even though everything in me screamed no. The drive home felt like driving toward a firing squad. I spent the entire 3 hours rehearsing what I wanted to say, running through arguments in my head, imagining worst-case scenarios. My mother would cry. My father would try to mediate. Emma would look at me like I'd betrayed her. And maybe I had. Maybe exposing my mother's theft automatically made me the villain in her story. But I'd also spent years being the invisible one. The one who accepted less, asked for less, apologized for needing anything at all. I was done. My father was waiting on the porch when I pulled up. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. Smaller. Come inside, he said. My mother was in the living room. She took one look at me and her eyes filled with tears. Honey, I'm so sorry. I should have asked you before. No, I said. I sat on the opposite side of the room from her, leaving maximum distance. You shouldn't have done it at all. And you definitely shouldn't have lied about it. And you shouldn't be calling the family and telling them I'm unstable instead of accepting responsibility. My father sat down heavily on the couch between us. I made a mistake, my mother said, her voice shaking. I was under so much pressure with Emma's wedding, and you were managing okay, and I thought. You thought wrong, I said. You thought I wouldn't find out. That's what you thought. And when I did find out, instead of being honest, you lied about the family struggling. You lied to my father. You called my friends and tried to convince them I was mentally unstable. You're still trying to make me the villain instead of dealing with what you did. That's not fair, my mother said. I was scared. I panicked. I was scared too, I said, and I could feel my voice shaking. I'm 22 years old and I'm terrified about affording college. I'm working 3 jobs and taking out loans while you have enough money to spend $8,000 on a wedding. And instead of admitting that, instead of having an honest conversation about why you prioritized Emma's celebration over my education, you stole from me and lied about it. My father was staring at my mother like he'd never seen her before. Is that true? He asked quietly. Did you lie about the financial struggles? My mother's silence was answer enough. We have money, my father said. It wasn't a question. You told me we were cutting back. You told me we were worried about retirement. You told me that's why we couldn't help with her tuition. Your mother has always taken care of family finances, my mother said weakly. You trusted me too. I trusted you not to steal from our daughter's inheritance, my father said, and his voice was ice. I trusted you to be honest with me. I trusted you to love our children equally. He stood up and walked out of the room. My mother's face crumpled. I felt something in me shift. Something I'd been holding on to for years finally loosened. Because this wasn't about forcing her to admit she'd done something wrong. She already knew that. She'd always known that. What I'd forced was accountability. I'd made it so she couldn't hide anymore. So my father couldn't hide. So the family couldn't collectively agree to pretend this never happened. My mother looked at me with red eyes. I'm sorry, she said. I'm genuinely sorry. Not because I got caught. Because I hurt you. Because I made you feel like you didn't matter as much as your sister. I waited. I waited to feel satisfied. To feel victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. That apology is about 5 years too late, I said. And it doesn't change what happened. David's letter stands. I want my money back, with interest, and I want you to stop calling people and spreading lies about my mental health. I want you to be honest about what you did and why. I will, she said. I'll call everyone back and tell them the truth. Good, I said. I left that night and drove back to campus. My father called me on the way home. I'm sorry, he said. For not seeing this before. For letting her make all the decisions without questioning her. For not protecting you. Okay, I said. I wasn't ready to forgive him yet, but I was ready to believe he meant it. 2 weeks later, at the family reunion, my mother made a statement. She admitted to the withdrawal, to the lie, to trying to discredit me afterward. She apologized to me in front of everyone. She apologized to my father. She committed to paying back the full amount plus interest within 6 months. Emma hugged me afterward, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know, she said. I would never have wanted her to. I know, I said. And I did. It wasn't a perfect ending. My relationship with my mother would need years of work. My father still had a lot to answer for. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible anymore. I'd made myself impossible to ignore. And that was enough.